Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Better get the cool slow, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Kyle Rittenhouse's book is a flop. Now, I'm doing this video from the Amazon page of Kyle Rittenhouse's book because I know that there are a lot of racists who want to go out here and flood the comment section looking to make excuses regarding the poor performance of Kyle Rittenhouse's book and looking to try to make justifications and excuses regarding the failure of Kyle Rittenhouse's book. So I'm going to go straight to the Amazon page, which was reported on as related to this book being a flop, and show you from a publisher's perspective the reason why this book is a failure. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse is the 17-year-old boy who decided to go to Kenosha, Wisconsin from his home in Illinois and had somebody drive him 30 miles into a riot zone and give him an AR-style weapon in an effort to so-called protect property and provide medical aid to people in this riot zone. And as he was in this riot zone, he wound up being confronted by several white far leftists and wound up murdering two of them and wound up wounding another. Now, as Kyle Rittenhouse's story became popular in the far right, many wanted to create a legend around him to make him some sort of folk hero, similar to the way they did with George Zimmerman as related to the murder of Trayvon Martin. Now, the main motivation I believe Kyle Rittenhouse had to go to Kenosha, Wisconsin, as related to his infamous story, was when he heard that this white police officer was shooting a black man. This is what motivated him to go to Kenosha as riots went on in Kenosha, because his main motivation was to go out here and murder black people. But in his book, he wants to tell us a completely different story, and that story really isn't selling with people, and that is shown with the Amazon sales numbers. And I'm going to scroll down and show you how poorly this book is doing. Now, this book's Amazon numbers are extremely poor when you consider that it's in the genre of nonfiction and it's being written by a infamous individual. I mean, in the nonfiction publishing market, books usually do very well. I know this for a fact because when I did The Man Crisis in 2018, I had close to 25 pre-orders for that book, and that book went on to sell about 525 copies so far. And that's just a nonfiction book written by an individual at a publishing house, SJS Direct. Now, I find it interesting that the publisher doesn't put their name on this book that was released back in November 19th of 2023. And you would think that this book being released almost nearly a month ago, that the sales numbers would be far better than this. Because when I look at this whole sales numbers for this book that is written by an infamous celebrity, this book should have been doing far better than this because it's a non-fiction book. I mean, non-fiction books usually are the books that many publishers make their money on, and usually these books usually have stronger numbers than this. And when I look at this bestsellers rank of 12,453, that's a very embarrassing number for a book that is written by a so-called infamous celebrity. I mean, this is far lower than when Lisa Cabrera made her video and Professor Black Truth made his video, and Newsweek made its article where the number was 9,000. So this book's numbers are plummeting as we speak, and as it plummets as we speak, we see that many of those on the far right don't really have an interest in supporting Kyle Rittenhouse as related to his literary endeavors. And that really runs counter to all of the big talk that many on social media have who get into my comment section looking to defend Kyle Rittenhouse. Many of these same people who look to defend Kyle Rittenhouse can't be bothered to go out here and look to spend any of their money on Kyle Rittenhouse's childish scribblings as related to this so-called book. Because if all of those people were so bold to go out here and support Kyle Rittenhouse, his book would not be down at the 12,453 number mark as related to sales and 654 in nonfiction. No, Kyle Rittenhouse's book would be doing a lot better. But the whole thing is, many of those people on the far right who were quick to go out here and support this monster, they basically have bailed on him because that's what white supremacists go out here and do. Now, before I go out and go further in depth, I'm going to go and talk about the publisher of this book, who was about to take a bath on this book as related to losses, and how they don't even have the courage to put their name on the Amazon page for this book. Now, I have been working with KDP, also known as Kindle Direct Publishing, way before when it was called CreateSpace. And I remember when Amazon bought CreateSpace and merged it into its Kindle Direct Publishers. And it's nothing more than typing in the publisher name in the publisher section, but the publisher didn't have the courage to do that. No, all they did was put the date of the publication in the publisher section, and that really shows me how little confidence they have in this book as related to it being on Amazon's website. Because after doing my own research, I found out who the publisher of this book was, and the publisher of this book is presented on this Court TV article as Michael Quinn Sullivan. And as if you go to the link to the Court TV website, it will take you over to Michael Quinn Sullivan's website, which is called Texas Scorecard. And I find it interesting that Michael Quinn Sullivan doesn't have Texas Scorecard as the name of the publisher on the KDP page. Again, showing me that he doesn't have much confidence or courage to stand behind Kyle Rittenhouse, because if you are the publisher of the book, then you would think you would put your company's name on the book. But this publisher basically is just as cowardly as Kyle Rittenhouse, who decided to go over to Kenosha, Wisconsin from Illinois, 30 miles away, with a AR-style weapon, and he was going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, not to go out there and help any of the rioters. No, I personally believe his only motivation for going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, was to go out here and murder black people, because he was upset about this white cop shooting this black man and this turning into a riot. And his way of making things right for his smooth world was to go out here and look to murder those black people in Kenosha, Wisconsin, for having the audacity to go out here and riot. Now, many on the far right, they love to move the goalpost as related to Kyle Rittenhouse's urban legend story by saying he was going there to volunteer to help police. That's one of the stories that they have. Another says that he wanted to go there to go protect the property of a guy who had a car lot. and another goes out here and says that he was looking to go out and provide medical assistance. Now, I call BS on all of those stories, and I call BS on all of those stories because the main reason why Kyle Rittenhouse went there as a minor was to go out here and again to kill black people. And any minor who allegedly is supposedly supposed to support the police, like Kyle Rittenhouse says he wouldn't want to go to a riot zone, because any minor who supposed to be supports the police understands two concepts. One is male authority, in that in him being a minor, he needs to submit to the authority of adult men. And two, he would understand the concept of chain of command, because any boy who aspires to be a cop understands that the way he can respect those men in authority is to go out here and submit to their authority, and understand that as a minor, it is not his job to enter into any sort of riot zone, because the chain of command as related to police is that you leave things in the hands of officers who are better trained. I mean, you have police officers and EMTs who could handle that riot zone, and they wouldn't really want a minor inside of a riot zone. No watch commander worth his salt or his character would want a minor in their riot zone, because that individual would be a liability who could harm others, or be a liability that could put themselves in jeopardy. This was something that was presented to me in an episode of Dragnet that came out in 1969 or 1970, and Jack Webb put this in an episode because he wanted people to understand the dangers of the job of police, and he wanted people to understand back then that a person is not supposed to be doing a job that police are doing, because you're going to impede their work. So when I listened to Kyle Rittenhouse sitting there talking about how he wanted to help police, I know that that argument is BS, and that was presented way back by Jack Webb on the Dragnet TV show for everybody to understand. And it was also possibly, I think, done in an episode of Adam 12, which was also produced by Jack Webb. So when I listen to Kyle Rittenhouse's arguments, they fall completely apart. And the whole thing that I see with the publisher, again, not looking to put their name on it, shows me how little integrity they have, because they're sitting there saying, oh, we're publishing Kyle Rittenhouse's book on Amazon, but you don't put the publisher name on it. Shows me they don't have much faith in Kyle Rittenhouse's book. And I also noticed that Kyle Rittenhouse's book is also presented in paperback on a website. But the whole thing is that if this paperback was so good, why isn't it on the Amazon page as well? Critical question I have to ask, because I publish ebooks and paperbacks on Amazon all the time, and I publish them usually at the same time, and I know how to use the KDP website to go out here and make it where it's possible to pre-order the Kindle book, and then usually on the day of the pre-order release for the Kindle book, I make the paperback available as well, so that readers can have an option to pick up either the Kindle or the paperback. I find it quite suspect that Kyle Rittenhouse's book is on Kindle and the paperback is on a separate website. I find it quite suspect he's got a pre-order for the paperback, and he's got the Kindle book available right now. No, usually when I'm out here publishing books myself, I may do a pre-order on the Kindle and have that released, but I have the paperback come out at around that time. So this whole thing sounds like a cockamamie business scheme, and it's a really poor business scheme as related to publishing, because you would think you would want to go out here and have all of your books on Amazon, but I believe that Kyle Rittenhouse and his publisher didn't want the book on Amazon in paperback, possibly because it wouldn't meet the guidelines for Amazon as related to his infamous reputation. So they put the book on Kindle and went to paperback, trying to do this so-called pre-order scheme. And this pre-order scheme doesn't look like it's gonna work, because again, since this book is supposed to be start shipping around December 15th, I mean, you would think you would want to get that book out there at the same time so that the paperback and the Kindle would ship. But it just shows how the far-right people really don't know much about the publishing business, because they're out here looking to try to see, they really don't have faith in him. And they don't have faith in him because, again, they would have put this book in Kindle and paperback on Amazon, the website with the greatest distribution, instead of trying to go out here and trying to sell it themselves. Because what they're trying to do is they're going to print up the books and try to have them shipped, but it doesn't look like there's much interest in anyone picking up Kyle Rittenhouse's Acquitted. No, people have stood by their convictions, and they have no interest in hearing anything else from Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse is looking to try to ride his infamy the same way that George Zimmerman did after he murdered Trayvon Martin. And what he's looking to do is trying to finance his infamy by going out here and publishing this book. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse has been struggling financially ever since he wound up murdering those two people and wounding another. And while many on the far right came out in the beginning to donate money to his cause, many of those individuals who used to donate money to his cause have basically wound up walking away from him. And I have to wonder what happened to Rick Schroeder, whatever happened to Eric July, whatever happened to Donald Trump, and many of those on the far right who championed Kyle Rittenhouse's cause. What happened to those people in the last 2 years? Because now Kyle Rittenhouse, according to his lawyer, is broke, and because he's broke, and dealing with civil lawsuits, he's got to go out here and try to find a way to make a living. And I guess he thought that this book was going to be the thing that would lead to him winding up being able to find a way to make a living. Well, I don't think he's getting much royalties from this Kindle book. No, I don't think that he's getting much sales as related to this book, because if your numbers are at the 12,000 mark, that means basically nobody's buying this book. And it looks like to me that many of the far-right white supremacists who were down with Kyle Rittenhouse have basically decided to walk away from him the same way that white supremacists walked away from George Zimmerman once he stopped being the trendy individual for the far right to support, and the same way that the two beta males who murdered Emmett Till wound up being forsaken right after they were acquitted from murdering Emmett Till. I find it to be interesting that there's a pattern to this behavior. Many on the far right will sit there and say they stand with a racist like Kyle Rittenhouse or George Zimmerman, or the two guys who wound up murdering Emmett Till, when people want to bring them to justice. But once they wind up getting acquitted, none of those white supremacists will go out here and actively support those individuals and leave those individuals to just wind up scavenging in poverty. And that's what's happening to Kyle Rittenhouse, who at 18 years old basically messed up his life, and now is 20 years old or so, and now is basically on the road to ruin that George Zimmerman and the two guys who wound up murdering Emmett Till are currently on. And that's a long road to be on, from 17 until he possibly winds up leaving this world. And Kyle Rittenhouse is in for a world of suffering, because he's going to find that many of the white supremacists like Rick Schroeder and Eric July and many of the others are not going to support him. Yeah, they went out here and spent their money looking to legally defend him, but they don't want to associate with him socially. And that's the way white supremacy works, because white supremacy loves to create a lie and a facade that they are all about these folk heroes that they so-called create. But many of these people won't lift a finger to give a guy like a Kyle Rittenhouse a job, because they don't want to lose face and be seen for the white supremacists they truly are. Now, this lawyer is saying that he's working, but if he's working, again, why is he broke? Critical question I have to ask regarding Kyle Rittenhouse. And if he's doing so well, why is he struggling right now as related to his lawyer, as related to the statements that they made? Now, according to the Court TV article, they're saying that this whole thing, this book was worth millions of dollars. Well, I don't believe that, because if this book was worth so much money, as related to a couple of reports, I mean, why is this book being presented on KDP, an independent publishing site? I mean, if this book is worth millions of dollars, you would think Kyle Rittenhouse would have been able to get an advance from a publishing house. And I don't think he would have been ever able to get an advance from a publishing house, because this book is just as infamous as O.J. Simpson's If I Did It. And no editor worth their salt wants to go out the way Judith Regan wound up going out when she published If I Did It, because after Judith Regan published If I Did It, that's when her publisher, I believe it was HarperCollins, wound up firing Judith Regan. And Judith Regan had over 30 years in the business, but the losses that HarperCollins, I believe, took on If I Did It, and the reputation tarnish that they took, was all that was needed to go out here and motivate the publisher to fire Judith Regan and destroy all the copies of If I Did It. So this is why Kyle Rittenhouse is going the route of KDP, and also going the route of going out here and printing his own books on a printer, not one of the print-on-demand companies, because I believe a company like Lightning Source wouldn't want anything to do with this book, and Amazon wouldn't want anything to do with the distribution of this book. So the only way he could go is through KDP, because the whole thing is, with the ebook, he could get a little attention through Amazon's platform, but the whole thing is they don't want it on their paperback platform, and the whole thing is that the paperback printers don't want anything to do with this book. So I'm looking at this whole business model, and it's showing me that the people who maintain the media want nothing to do with the legend of Kyle Rittenhouse, and that is shown by the way this book is being distributed, and it's also being shown by the just absolutely abysmal sales numbers, because for a guy who has been on Fox News and seen by millions of people, you would think that this book would have been presented in a just better way as related to promotion. You would think that with all the media exposure that Kyle Rittenhouse has had, he would have really strong sales numbers. You would think that his book would be at least in the high numbers as related to Amazon sales, and not in this ignominious 12,453 nearly a month into sales. Now, I know that the publishing market is slow right now, because I'm dealing with a bit of a sales slump, and I'm seeing books like Jada Pinkett's Worthy do poorly. But you would think that the numbers, again, for a celebrity nonfiction book would be better than this. You would think that the numbers for a book would be better than this. And you would think Kyle Rittenhouse, if he was acquitted like he said, would be in a better fiscal position. I mean, he was given millions of dollars as related to his legal defense fund, and he had the judge basically go out here and hold his hand all throughout the entire proceedings to lead to his acquittal and an all-white jury. But what's happening here is that the white supremacists who go out here and elevate people like Kyle Rittenhouse, they will go out here and look to protect their system of white supremacy. But once they protect their system of white supremacy, they abandon that individual And that's exactly what's happening to Kyle Rittenhouse right now. The same way it happened to George Zimmerman, the same way it happened to the two beta chumps who murdered Emmett Till. All of these individuals went out here and were tools for white supremacy. And now that white supremacy no longer needs these tools, they are basically looking to break these tools. And that's what's happening to Kyle Rittenhouse right now, who is on a long road of suffering. And I'd have to say he's out here, he's not going to be doing very well based on the 8th grade way this book is written. And he wants us to believe that he went to Kenosha to help his community. And I have to call bullshit on that, because the only way he could have helped his community was by staying his little self home and obeying the commands of law enforcement. His life wouldn't be as miserable as it is if he hadn't given into his racist views of looking to go out here and looking to murder black people, because he wasn't helping his community by going to Kenosha. No, he was looking to go out here and sate his feelings about feeling power by taking the lives of black people, taking the lives of black people who he felt disrupted his smooth world as related to not knowing their place. And what he wanted to do was go down to Kenosha to put those black people in the place he wanted them to be, which I believe was the grave. And what Kyle Rittenhouse wants to do now that he knows that his whole life is basically a mess is try to sell us a story as he's out here filing civil lawsuits that have no merit. He's basically going out here pushing an alleged agenda as related to pushing a narrative regarding himself, but he's finding himself being pushed out of social circles by white supremacy, the same way George Zimmerman was pushed out of those circles and those two guys who murdered Emmett Till. And when we look at the guys who murdered Emmett Till in the ignominious fashion that they died, where they died in poverty and died suffering all throughout their life, because many of the white people who went out here and were cheering their cause abandoned them, that's when these men wound up realizing possibly that it was that by taking this black man's life, that they were nobody that nobody wanted to associate with. And that's what happens with white supremacy. Again, they put on a face where they make it look like they want to be with you, but the whole thing is that once they finish with you as related to their narrative, they leave you to wander in poverty and wander in misery like they're doing Kyle Rittenhouse right now. And this flop of a book basically shows how Kyle Rittenhouse doesn't have any of the allies that he thought he had back when he went out here and participated in the murders of those people. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and you can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me making more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Vampires Stalk the Darkness of the Eternal Night. Get your copy of Eternal Night in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.